everybody. Today I was going to go over the plot of the book Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. I listened to the book on audiobook. I unfortunately don't own a physical copy because I'm hoping he does an anniversary edition. So we'll just add the cover in post. Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. Skyward has 3 books out in the series currently, and the 4th book is coming out in November, in a couple weeks. And so I thought this would be a good chance to do a recap of the earlier books to get people hyped up and up to speed if they don't necessarily have the time to go over them all again. The first book, Skyward, all the books, follow Spencer Nightshade, who is a 15, 16-year-old girl who is a descendant of a bunch of space travelers whose starship, called the Defiant, crash landed on her planet about 3 generations ago, so about 100 years ago. Hey, Bandit. And they're now living kind of trapped on this planet world, kept there by attacks from an alien race they call the Krell. So they have spaceships that do flybys, bombing runs. They have settlements that were deep underground, both to protect themselves from these bombardments by the Krell, and also the planet has a bunch of debris in the upper atmosphere that rains down on the planet. Kind of constantly and sporadically, big asteroid, meteor impact kind of events. So the different parts of the ship, the different crew members kind of stuck together. So you have engine, command, medical, kind of form different communities and caverns. They never grew to be that large because that made them more likely to be picked up on sensors by the Krell and then attacked. So they were kind of living in these remote communities. This world was an ancient colony world or ancient inhabited planet by humans. So there's a lot of technology and gear they were able to repair and repurpose. Water treatment, manufactories, stuff like that. And they're using like algae farms and vats deep underground. The more prominent members of the crew and the survivors live deeper underground because it's safer, while the lesser tiers of society live closer to the surface. So the story starts, Spencer's about 10-ish, and after about 100 years on the planet, people have been able to restart like a space program, upper atmosphere, like space fighters, using what they call acclivity rings, that are able to fly up in the air. They basically nullify gravity and provide upward propulsion, so you don't need like large takeoff runways. They can do like vertical takeoffs, and that provides the suspension and slight maneuverability, and then you have thrust through the main engines. So they already have the technology, the schematics, and advanced manufacturing, so they're getting a space race very quickly. And now they're defending against the Krell. They're trying to push those fighters back so they can start a surface base and kind of defend. So Spencer's out with her dad. They're exploring through the caverns, going around. They have a device called a light lance, which is like a cool bracelet that tells the time, but also shoots like a lance of energy, like a cool sci-fi whip, Indiana Jones style, that they use to like swing and climb and navigate through these caves and caverns. And they're out exploring, and they get to the surface, and Spencer's really never seen the surface in the sky. And then they see a bunch of debris falling, and it's a really cool moment. And they actually see ships coming down, like actual enemy Krell fighters. So they radio it in. Her dad runs back to the caverns, gets to his ship, and it's actually a huge battle. It's like one of the largest number of Krell deployments and the largest number of human deployments, and they're actually able to push the Krell back and win this big battle, which leads to the settlement up on the surface. So it's a big defining moment that, hey, we won, and we can now hold a surface embattlement with turrets and cannons and an actual airfield, and defend off this foothold on the surface of the planet, allowing us to have higher numbers of people and start having people in different caverns to meet together, and build more of a like city and civilization on this planet. And it's awesome. That's great. Except Spencer's dad is defined a coward in this battle. That he flees from battle and is shot down and killed. And so Spencer's dad's dead, and it's awful. And everyone kind of ostracizes her and her family because her dad was a coward. And all the other pilots that fought in this great battle are like first citizens, and they have like wealth and comfy homes down deep into safe tunnels. So Spencer is 5 years later, kind of scavenging around these tunnels. She's a rat hunter, living with her mom and her grandma, gran, and yeah, her only big dream is to become a great pilot like her dad, and kind of reclaim their legacy, and their rightful spot in the hierarchy of this planet, and just say like, hey, my dad was awesome. He wasn't a coward. I'm not a coward. So she is studying nonstop to enter flight school with her best friend Raj, and they're studying. Test comes, and Raj passes with flying colors. He gets the test done super quick. He's like the best in the class. This little nerd. And Spencer's test is not flight questions. It's not about planes, aerodynamics, flight tactics, battles, military history, all the things she was studying. It was like algae farming and sanitation and all the jobs people have been heavily hinting she takes jobs in. And she can't do it. She just fails out the whole test. This isn't relevant because I'm going to be a pilot. And all the other first citizen children, the next generation, are grandfathered in of their parents being great pilots, and they just can turn in blank tests, and they don't even have to try. And here she is, not allowed to compete at all. So she's really bummed out. This has been her life dream. So she stays in the classroom. She grabs one of the other, spoiled kids, first citizens, blank test, starts filling it out. She knows every answer. Fills it out, stays in the class, and this guy comes in the class, like the janitor, and he's like, hey, what are you doing? Like, I gotta clean, you gotta get out of here. She's like, just give me some time, go away. And he's like, okay. Goes away, comes back, starts flipping through the test, and she realizes it's not the janitor, this is actually like a pilot. And he's like, hey, you did really good, but only one of these answers is wrong. And he starts like grilling her, like, hey, why do you want to be a pilot? And she's like talking to him, and it's actually her dad's co-pilot. His name is Captain Cobb, call sign Mongrel. And he's like, hey, they can't tell me who not to put in my class. Show up tomorrow, 8 a.m. I'll handle the rest. And he actually accepts her into the class. The guy who knew her dad really well, and he's like, you should be at least allowed to try, and I'll take the flack. So Spencer is allowed into flight school. She is ecstatic. It is in a different cavern, so she says goodbye to her mom, gran. Her mom doesn't want her to go. Her husband was lost to this war and this fight. Doesn't want her 15-year-old daughter to go out and, die the same way. Her friend Raj immediately kind of drops out. They get thrown into battle like the first day, not to fight, but they're so desperate for pilots and ships that they send all the trainees just to hover and show numbers and like guard the base. And it really shakes Raj's nerves. So he's like, hey, I can't do this. He bows out. He's like, this isn't for me. And Spencer, they go through a couple weeks. They're on simulators. They're doing training. Specifically, there's a Jorgen White, who is another legacy student. That he is one of the kids of the first citizens, a highly decorated. His dad's highly decorated. His mom is like an engineer. Like, they're both very involved in the community, like very influential people who also have flown and fought in the founding fight. And he walks in hours and hours in simulators and real flight time, coming from this kind of privileged background. And he's assigned flight leader, and him and Spencer are kind of like head to head because she wanted to be flight leader. Again, he has flown like hundreds of hours and actually knew how to fly. She just wanted it because she wanted it. But who can blame her? That'd be pretty sweet. So they're head to head. That's the flight leader. She's not allowed to stay in the base because the Admiral Judy Ironsides does not want her in. She was the one who was trying to like force her out, keep her from joining in the first place. It's like, well, I can't keep you out of the class because I have to obey the laws too, but you're not allowed to eat our food or sleep in our bunks or anything. So every night, Spencer is like hiking back to the caves, back and forth between class. She finds like a cavern that she can like sleep in closer, and she's just like scavenging for rats. She's out there one day, and there's like a big like rock fall, and she's like sliding around for cover, and she finds like this newly opened cavern that has a ship in it. That's this really old, like 100-year-old ship. So this is really cool. So she starts like living in this ship. It's got like the chair goes back, and there's like a rudimentary like shower cleaner in it. She steals Jorgen's battery from his car, like his power supply, and she uses that to power the ship, which is hilarious. And she recruits her buddy Ned, who has studied engineering in the ships and ship dynamics and properties just right with her. Really smart kid, and he's looking for engineering jobs anyway. He's highly recruited after doing so well in the test, and so he's working with her to like kind of take the ship apart and repair it. He's able to like borrow tools from his job, and they're able to like, without reporting the ship, be like, hey, like this is a cool thing they're doing on the nose design, or like he's able to sketch out schematics based off the real ship he's seeing and kind of turn those into this job. And they're like, oh my goodness, you're a genius. You came up with a ship design all by yourself. And he's not telling them that he's just like writing down what he's seeing. But it works out for everybody because they're able to get improvements to their design based on this kind of advanced old tech. And they're able to repair what they are calling MBOT, because the ship has artificial intelligences, which nothing on this planet has. They have advanced manufacturing and shipbuilding and other advanced tools, but they're using like landline communication. Radios are very not very used, only for like the military and emergencies. Most things are like plugged into the wall, so they're very lacking in some types of communication, including AI. So this bot is talking to her and like helping guide with the repairs. He's got like advanced holograms, and he has like memories of his old pilot that told him to like hide. And they were looking for like mushrooms. He has all these mushroom databases, and spots of his memory are missing. He's like 100 years old at least. He has holograms that he was able to project like walls and caverns to cloak his ship. It was probably part of the reason he wasn't seen. He also has like stealth technology to block like sonar and radar that kind of hit his cavern. And as he got into like low power mode and his battery died, which Spencer had to replace, that's the explanation why he wasn't discovered for like 100 years. It's just until his power ran out, he was no longer able to like keep up those systems, and then the different rock slides and impacts from a kind of open up different cavern holes, which Spencer found. So these new green recruits, only like a couple months into their pilot, are kind of repeatedly thrown in again and again as Judy Ironsides is getting desperate, so they're having to do actual space flights. The Krell that used to do just kind of like runs to prevent them from getting salvaged. Different pieces of space debris, they go slower or faster depending on the amount of acclivity stone and acclivity rings in them. So some of the larger pieces can actually be recovered with like light lances and like pulled up and lowered down gently, and they can recover those acclivity rings to make more starships. So the Krell would typically, when there's a big debris storm, come in and shoot down the debris or try to shoot down the humans to prevent them from recovering more material to achieve more space flight and kind of keep them grounded. But that's kind of escalated that they're doing a lot of like life busters, which are basically super nukes, very destructive bombs that have a special big slow bomber to deploy, and they deploy them kind of sparingly because they're either expensive or rare. But more and more they're using those, or trying to use those to destroy this base and the human civilization. So these kids are being thrown up into battle and they're untrained, so a couple of them die. Spencer's friends is very dramatic, and then they're not able to get the training they need to be real pilots to like stay alive because they're being thrown in earlier and earlier. So this war of diminishing resources. Because of that, a lot of the kids from like wealthier families that are the better pilots with more experience that have been trained from a younger age are being pulled out for safer jobs in politics and shipping runs. So their parents are pulling strings, and so they're losing some of the best pilots. So that's a lot of the politics that's going on, kind of in the background. They find there's this giant piece of debris. So all the different layers. There's actually, you get this picture of a shell around the planet. That there's different platforms and manufacturing facilities up in space. And one of these, Spencer flies close to, and they find out it was like a airplane, like a spaceship manufacturer that has hundreds of acclivity stones and rings. And it's this big krill deployment to try to shoot it down. So the next time this happens, Spencer goes out, and Judy declares all her ships go out. So everyone goes out. Like, if we can save this one piece, this is our proactive. We can get enough ships to really make a big difference. It's kind of the second battle of Alta, which is the surface civilization / base. So they do this huge deployment, and it was actually not a Krell trick, but the Krell knew or suspected it was kind of like a bait. That the Krell's like, oh, this was probably gonna be a huge human deployment because we had a similar launch a couple like weeks ago, and so Judy deploys everybody, and the Krell use this to have 2 life busters kind of sneak in through the back, and some really awesome, epic dogfighting scenes in here. I probably skipped over some stuff, and I'm sorry. So, Spencer is shot down during this fight. She shoots down, and she's involved with the team that shot down the first Lifebuster, I believe. And she ejected, and one of her friends did not eject, and that's when one of her friends died. And the moral was, if you get ejected, if you crash your ship, you're kicked out of flight school, you never be a full pilot. And they were launching, like, she made it through. They were going to become full pilots in, like, a week or something. And then this battle happened, and she got shot, and she ejected, saved her life. Ship crashed. It was unrecoverable. So she's out of flight school. So that was, like, a big battle. She did the right thing, though. That's what Cobb's always been pushing for. Like, hey, the ships don't matter. We can make more ships. Like, save your lives. These kids are dying way too young. All our people are dying. That's not the important thing. So there's a little philosophy difference right there between Cobb and Admiral Ironsides, who are just kind of throwing the next generation against the Krell wave after wave. So Spencer does get shot down. M-Bot shuts himself down. That he's saying, hey, they get M-Bot working, they repair him, they fly. But he's like, I wasn't meant to fly. Like, I was told to hide by my pilot. I gotta wait for my pilot to come back. And Spencer's like, it's been 100 years. Your pilot's dead. But due to his own kind of programming and beliefs, he's like, hey, I'm not... Eventually you'll talk me in. I want to fly. So I know if I don't shut down, you'll convince me and wear me down to fly and to obey my primary directive. So he powers down. So Spencer's kind of like alone and without her ship and without her M-Bot ship. And then you get this big attack happens, and so she runs in the hangar, and she's like, you gotta get me up in the air. And they're like, you're not a pilot anymore. I'm like, hey, we're under attack. Everyone's up. They're deploying all the flights. Like, this is the graduation ceremony is when this is happening, that Judy is taking, like, hey, all our new pilots, everyone up. And so Spencer goes up with, like, a ship that was already damaged in another fight that doesn't have shields. It's already kind of, like, rattling. She's able to shoot, and the life buster, like, if you shoot the life buster, it'll explode. If you kill the ship, it'll explode. And her buddy, Kimmelin, who's this, like, crack shot, really cool name, mediocre pilot, but a crack shot, she shoots the connector between the ship and the life buster, and it falls. And Spencer grabs it with the lifeline as they, like, drag it out and drag it away. But there's also, like a timer on it. There's so many ways this thing will explode. And that was a different ship. Oh man, sorry. Sanderson gets shot down like 3 different ships. She got shot down on her primary ship. She went in a second ship, and she lands this one, the damaged ship. Yeah, yeah. She shoots down a light buster, shoots down another ship, holds them off, lands it, and then she's out in the middle of nowhere like a broken ship. And then Cobb shows up in Elmbot, and he hasn't flown since that Battle of Alta. And you find out the reason he hasn't flown was one, he got shot down, he like jacked up his leg and everything, but he also shot down Spencer's dad, that was not a coward. He flew up into space, and he flew up outside the debris field, up in outer space, came back down and shot down like 4 of his buddies, and no one knows why. They had like the radio chatter, and Spencer had stolen, or not stolen, she had taken the recording from that battle, like the historic playback, like the tape, and she had played it back and actually had seen what her dad did and actually heard the radio footage. And Cobb told her kind of what was going on, what was there, and he kind of went crazy, and Cobb had to shoot him down, like his best friend, a wingman, and that's what they were kind of covering up, and they were kind of afraid that whatever defect they call it that was in her dad was also in Spencer. And her dad was like one of the best pilots, and they're watching the tapes, and they actually see he's actually responding before the Krell ships move. He's actually predicting their movements. And there's a little bit of lore with Spencer, like hearing whispers from the stars, and like all this cool stuff. Her granddad's like, hey, we're meant to travel the stars. Like, her grand's telling her things about her ancestors. And it's like, oh, we used to fly the ships and make the ships move. Like, we got a gift. So, Cobb comes in Elmbot. That Elmbot had woken up, radioed Spencer's old radio that Cobb had. Cobb found out what was going on, got an Elmbot, flew to Spencer, picked her up. Spencer went, lands the life buster just before it hit, flew it away, now it's going to blow up. And she teleports. She's just in a different spot. And they're like, what was that? And then she's like, there's a gap in the stars. So I'm going to listen to the stars like Grandma told me, and like my dad did. So she flies up an Mbot above the debris field, and everyone's like, no, don't do it. That's what your dad did. He went crazy. And she gets up there, and there's Krell ships, and they're using something to try to like project images into her brain, which is what they did to her dad, that they had projected these images, they call them cytonic images, to make him think that all his friends were dead, and he's actually fighting the Krell down there, not his own ships. So that starts to happen to Spencer, but Elmbot is able to block it with his advanced technology and stealth mode, that he actually starts blocking all communications and sensors, and it kind of shield her from that. So she's able to fly back down. We kind of learn that she has that gift, that cytonic gift from her dad, and Gran, and those people that ran the engines. There's additional lore that was how the Defiant landed on this planet. That her Gran's mom jumped the entire ship. This teleport jump, that was kind of her ability, was able to jump through space. Like the engine crew, the people with the engines, that's how they made the ship move. And they were running from this attack, and they actually chose to go to this planet called Detritus. And her great-grandmother was the one that brought them here. It was too much, the strain of that, and that's what killed her great-grandma. But her gran and kind of like helped train her dad, and it's kind of helping teaching her about these things. And people were kind of like hush-hush about it, because a lot of the people from the wealthier caverns also have the same defect, and they also have the same abilities. And so we think that some of the other kind of better pilots are also able to see the signals, is what they're doing, that the Krells are actually drones, most of them, not all of them, but they're actually drone ships that are going the transmissions through space. So as they're being controlled by remote pilots, they're using through cytonic, like subspace, to give you near instant communication instead of like radio and light waves that have this big delay. Like this low lag, low latency control the ships. But Spencer, being Cytonic of this gift, is able, and her dad, see these communications, process them super quickly, and kind of know what the ship's going to do to beat them to it. That's also kind of how Mbot's working. Being this older advanced ship, he has cytonic circuitry that is able to process super quickly. It's kind of doing the processing outside of space and time, in this subspace area. That's why he can be almost a real intelligence and super quick, because he's actually processing faster than the speed of light. So those are the kind of connections, the things we're kind of hinting at. So she lands. They kind of tell everyone about Mbot, kind of study him. What happens is kind of Admiral Ironsides kind of retires because she fell for this big plan, committed all the wrong resources, and nearly lost the entire city of Alta. If it wasn't for Spencer having these abilities and gifts, and secret super advanced fighter, and going up like 3 times when told not to and being grounded and kind of saving the day, which was awesome and much better in the book, the details and the explanation of these moments. So definitely don't watch this video if you haven't already read the book. Spoiler warning. That is the story. Next up, Starsight. So tune in next week if you want to remember what happens next. Thanks for watching. Okay, addendum. This is a model replica of Mbot. This is her advanced starship. This is the acclivity ring, glowing blue ring on the bottom. Really cool shape. Is that better? That's Mbot. Second addendum. In the cavern where she finds Mbot's ship, she also finds a yellow slug with blue spines that is like cat size, like toaster size, like a pretty big slug. That's something I didn't catch my second time through. I was thinking like slug. No, it's like a slug that is like friendly, and she like feeds and waters it, and it repeats words, so it's like a parrot slug. You kind of like talk to her a little bit, and she calls it Doom Slug, because she was raised on stories, all these great warriors and battles, and she's a bloodthirsty little story monster. So Spencer's great. She's very dramatic, and she has a slug called Doom Slug, which kind of like also lives in Mbot's ship, and that's important for later, and it's just cool. So I want to add those 2 things.
Save Bandit!